Sam Billings moves across his crease to a Mohammad Siraj's ball that will hit the off bail. But Billings isn't interested in the line or the length because his movement starts before the ball is delivered. He makes his first movement before it leaves the hand. By the time the ball is on its way, so is Billings. He knows what kind of line and length he will probably receive, so he moves over to the offside to pop it back over his shoulder for 4. The more I think about Bazball and England's new method of white ball batting with the red ball, the more I'm left with one central theoretical question. What is Test cricket without a line and length you can trust? Whether it be spin or pace, most bowlers have a natural line and length, generally that comes from their home conditions, but these are usually just slight variations on how the game has evolved at any one point. The real major part of this is era.
This is the last knot. My dad told me to say this.
If you started bowling in the late 1800s, chances are you would have bowled really straight at the stumps. That's because the pitches were very poor because liquid manure was only just spreading through the game, and it made sense to bowl at the stumps. But then players like Victor Trumper and Ranji started opening up the leg side intentionally by hitting the ball there. Trumper used the better pitches to play across the line, and the bowlers adjusted over generations to bowl in the corridor outside off stump. At the same time, bowlers were now swinging the ball much better, meaning that their length had to be fuller. And then 2 things changed that. The first was probably cricket going from the back foot no ball to the front foot law. Bowlers no longer got as low, there wasn't as much reason for them to slide into the crease, and that led to taller bowlers who naturally find it harder to swing the ball, so they bowl a shorter length. They generally bang the ball in, if not bouncer bowling, then certainly more back of a length bowl. Then a Hawkeye and DRS comes along and shows us the bowling short wasn't actually that good idea because the stumps are far shorter than we ever believed. So the length actually goes fuller, and the line changed as well because umpires now understood that not all balls were sliding down leg side. And with the advent of the wobble ball, bowlers actually tried to make sure that every delivery was going to be hitting off stump. So most bowlers tend to fit into the era, which is why we get fewer pitch-up swinging bowlers now who come close to the stumps than we did in the 80s. And when bowlers don't fit in, they often struggle to get games. I think the most extreme example I always think of is Ryan Harris. He started his career with South Australia in 2001, and he was genuinely quick, very smart, and could move the ball around. And he never bowled more than 150 overs in his first 6 seasons. In Adelaide, he would dominate grade cricket. And people said the reason he didn't get more wickets bowling full in Shield cricket was because he was using a club length. In 2007 and 8, he bowled that same length, and he took 37 wickets at 29. And it was clear watching him bowling that year that he was the best seamer in the country. From there, it took a couple of years for Australia to agree, and from 2010 to 2016, he had the world's 3rd best bowling average. And I wonder how much of his career being so slow at the start was simply that he didn't look like he was bowling correctly. England's current batting doesn't quite fit in either, by design. Having almost given up on finding a fully functioning, consistent test batters, they've decided to smack the hell out of the ball. And while this might seem like a wacky plan that can't consistently work on most test surfaces, which is maybe true, the idea still has a lot of logic, and they were at their lowest moment at that. And there was another team back in the day who also changed cricket when they were at the low moment. And the West Indies also tried to change cricket on the back of 2 major events and low moments. Dennis Lillee and Jeff Thompson tormenting them with quick bowling, and India chasing 406 at Port of Spain. Clive Lloyd's plan was to move on from spin bowling, outside of their part-timers, and slow down the over rates and use his quicks to dominate teams. And it's important to note that the West Indies used to have a lot of great spin bowling, and they just kind of went with the quicks. In the new book, Crickonomics, they talk about how Australia was already the #1 team in the world, but they were getting frustrated that they would keep drawing games, and it led them to start scoring a lot quicker. But what is talked about a lot less is that Steve Waugh would be very attacking with his slips. Even if a batter was scoring freely, he would just jam them in there and wait for the mistakes. These were both risky strategies. Australians could have lost what they had built, and the West Indies could have rued never having a spinner. But both went against the thinking at the time, but it worked out pretty well. Of course, there were probably hundreds of times, maybe thousands, where test teams did something similar and it did not work. But those are the losers, and their stories are quite often lost to time. The other thing that the West Indies and Australia did was they backed their strength. This is what England is trying to do now. They are making a lot of guys who hit balls hard. Why not try that? And you can already see the flaws of this method, with Jasprit Bumrah bowling more Yorkers in a spell than New Zealand did in the entire summer. Plus, Mohammad Shami was getting the ball to move in both directions at excellent pace and occasionally spit off the wicket. And because of how well they bowled Rishabh Pant and Broads over to Bumrah, India actually scored quicker in the first innings. Although it wasn't always for a lack of trying. Even when Bairstow was not scoring pretty much at all, you could see his white ball intent right there, but he couldn't really get close enough to the ball to make it count. Even Joe Root was throwing his bat at wide ones a few times. And then, as often has happened in this English summer, thanks to the Duke's ball's quality taking a hit during COVID, when the ball got old, Bairstow and Stokes really went for it. And their methods are very different. Stokes comes down the wicket a lot or uses a flat bat, sometimes both. Bairstow drives in the air from a length and flicks the ball viciously to the leg side and swings at the wide ones. But they're both essentially doing the same thing. They're attacking the line of length that bowlers want to land the ball on. Think about it this way, if you're landing the ball at 6 metre length just outside off stump and Stokes is 2 metres down the wicket and outside the line, you've gone from bowling a good length at off stump to a full one on the legs. The problem with Stokes' method is when he comes down the wicket, the bowlers see it. And so they can bowl short or they can change their delivery, and quite often because he's moving, he's also still trying to play an attacking shot. It's not a solid base. This summer we have seen him hit the ball onto his stumps, straight up in the air and find mid-on or mid-off. And why he was trying to do this against Shardul Thakur is also bizarre because for all the brains that Thakur possesses as a bowler, he can actually struggle with just line and length at times. He's the most expensive bowler in the IPL over the last 3 years, going at more than 9 and over. And so for Stokes, he's playing a low percentage game by actually attacking that much. His normal level of attacking was probably going to keep enough pressure on Thakur. And let's compare Stokes to Bairstow's method, which I think is a lot better. Let's say you bowl 6 consecutive balls at the top of off stump, and he plans to attack all of them. If there is any help in the wicket, chances are he will miss at least 2. And of the others, he will probably check his shot or miss-hit a couple as he adjusts to the ball. Now, because he's such a good and consistent striker, he's likely to middle to. And being that at the moment he's trying to hit everything in the air, they'll go over any fielders in a standard test ring. And because of his power, 8 runs is the minimum he's probably going to score off those 2 balls. Now, you as the bowler or fielding captain have a decision to make. And before this, it was pretty easy. You'll probably stick with your bowler or field for 2 or 3 overs and see how you go, because you wouldn't back the player to keep consistently hitting. But Bairstow can. And if you have a look at his innings, in the first half he had to start twice and was somehow not bowled by Shami while he was playing aggressive drives that he never really got that close to. But once he got going, he was scoring at 9 runs and over by simply attacking balls that most test batters would not be lofting. So what do you do when a player weaponizes your best ball? New Zealand tried to bounce him, and some of those balls still haven't landed yet from Nottingham. India only bowled 2 overs of spin, so there's always a chance of that hitting Jadeja, which Bairstow has never really managed even in ODIs, is a way forward. But you still have to bowl your pace. And Test cricket has always been about line and length. The white ball game has had far more variation. But in tests, you run up and you hit the spot. But what do you do when the spot you were trying to hit is now the one that someone else hits you for 6 from? I think above everything else, the intent, the good vibes, the freedom, the baz, this is the most important thing that England are trying to do. They're going to war with line and length. And we have seen it from Root and Stokes and Bairstow and even Billings. I mean, if you go back and you look at this ball from Mohammad Siraj, it is a good line and length. We have seen him zip these balls back and take many LBs in his short career so far. He's a fairly quick bowler with good control and a wicked 3/4 seam wobble ball. And yet when he bowls this good test delivery, Sam Billings scoops it. The chances are that this won't work long term or consistent. But this is what England does best. They hit hard. They might not win, but they were losing before anyway.